The veteran, the thugs, and the royal guard. It was a crisp autumn evening in London, the kind where the sky bled orange and pink over the River Thames. The city was winding down, people heading home after long days, the streets filled with the usual symphony of car horns, footsteps, and distant conversations. Among the pedestrians strolling through the city was Reggie Thornton, a 91-year-old veteran of World War II. A man of quiet dignity, he had lived through bombings, battles, and the brutalities of war, only to see the world change in ways he never imagined. With a slow but steady gait, he walked the familiar path from the local cafe to his modest flat, his cane tapping against the pavement. But tonight, trouble lurked in the shadows. The wrong target near a dimly lit alley. A group of 3 young men stood laughing, their hooded sweatshirts pulled tight against the cold. They weren't just loitering, they were looking for an easy mark. And to them, Reggie Thornton seemed like exactly that. "Oi, Grandad, you got any change for us?" one of them called out, his voice laced with mockery. Reggie paused, gripping his cane. He had seen their type before, not in battle, but in life. Young, reckless, believing themselves untouchable. He turned slowly, his sharp blue eyes locking onto the gang of thugs. "No, son, but maybe if you work for a living, you wouldn't need handouts." The leader of the group, a lanky youth with a scar running down his left cheek, sneered. "Big words for an old man," he said, stepping forward. "Bet you don't move so fast anymore, do ya?" The second thug, shorter but stockier, chuckled. "Maybe we should help him lighten his load." Reggie sighed. He had survived the Blitz. He had stormed the beaches of Normandy, and now he had to deal with this? But what neither Reggie nor the thugs realized was that they weren't alone. The silent watcher a few feet away, standing near the entrance of a historic building, was Royal Guard Sergeant William Harrington. Dressed in the iconic red tunic and bearskin hat, he had been stationed there for hours, unmoving, stoic, as all Royal Guards were trained to be. To the tourists and passers-by, he was just another ceremonial figure, another part of London's history. But in reality, he was much more than that. Underneath the rigid discipline, William was a veteran in his own right. A former soldier of the British Army, he had served in Afghanistan before joining the esteemed ranks of the Royal Guard. He had been trained to recognize danger, to assess threats quickly. And right now, his trained eye saw the old man being cornered by 3 troublemakers. His grip tightened on the rifle slung over his shoulder. Royal Guards weren't just for show. They were warriors. And though they were bound by strict codes of conduct, they had the right to act when civilians were in danger. The standoff, one of the thugs, clearly growing impatient, reached out and shoved Reggie's shoulder. Big mistake. Before the gang could process what was happening, a deep, commanding voice sliced through the air. "Stand down. Now." The Royal Guard had spoken. The 3 young men froze. Guards weren't supposed to talk. Guards weren't supposed to move. And yet, here was one, staring them down with an intensity that sent a chill down their spines. "Move along, gentlemen," William warned, stepping toward them. His 6'2" frame, the military precision in his movements, and the sheer authority in his voice made it clear. He wasn't bluffing. The leader hesitated. "We don't want trouble, mate." "You already found it," William countered. He turned slightly, revealing the bayonet fixed to his rifle. A reminder that Royal Guards were not defenseless. That was enough. With mumbled curses, the 3 thugs backed away, their bravado evaporating under the unyielding gaze of the soldier. As soon as they disappeared down the alley, William turned to the old man. "Are you all right, sir?" Reggie studied him for a moment before letting out a dry chuckle. "You know, son, I've faced down German tanks and lived through air raids. 3 hooligans don't scare me much." William smiled, giving a respectful nod. "Even so, sir, it was an honor to step in for a fellow soldier." Reggie's eyes widened slightly. "You served?" "Yes, sir. British Army. Afghanistan." The old veteran's face softened. "Then you know what it means to look after your own." "Yes, sir." A beat of silence passed between them, 2 warriors from different generations sharing an unspoken understanding. Then, with a firm handshake, Reggie said, "Thank you, lad." William simply nodded, resuming his post as if nothing had happened. But to the people who had witnessed it, the tourists who had secretly filmed the encounter, the shopkeepers watching from across the street, it was a moment they wouldn't forget. Because that night, they saw what it truly meant to be a soldier. And no thug in London would ever underestimate an old veteran again. Reggie Thornton continued his walk home after his unexpected encounter, but now with a renewed sense of pride. The world may have changed, but honor and duty still lived in the hearts of good men. Men like Sergeant William Harrington. Meanwhile, back at his post, William stood motionless once again, but something in him had shifted. It wasn't every day that a royal guard got involved in civilian matters, but he had no regrets. Protecting others was what he had sworn to do, whether on the battlefield or on the streets of London. Little did they know, their interaction was about to go viral. The internet erupts. A tourist visiting from Canada had captured the entire scene on video. Within hours, the footage was uploaded to social media, where it spread like wildfire. The headline read, "Thugs harass an elderly veteran." Unaware a royal guard is watching, within 24 hours, millions of people had seen the clip. Comments flooded in from across the globe. Fire, that royal guard is a real-life hero. Fire, much respect to the old veteran. He didn't even flinch. Fire, they messed with the wrong grandpa. Fire, God bless our soldiers, past and present. Even the British Army's official Twitter account reposted the video, adding, "Once a soldier, always a soldier. Well done, Sergeant Harrington." It didn't take long before the BBC, Sky News, and even international media outlets picked up the story. The footage was played on news broadcasts, and soon, both Reggie Thornton and Sergeant William Harrington became unexpected heroes. A special invitation a few days later, as Reggie sat in his small flat, sipping his morning tea, he heard a knock at his door. When he opened it, he was stunned to see a well-dressed man in a black suit standing before him. "Mr. Thornton?" the man asked with a polite smile. "Aye, that's me," Reggie replied. "I'm from Buckingham Palace. Her Majesty's office has seen the video of your encounter, and the royal family would like to invite you and Sergeant Harrington to a special ceremony at the palace." Reggie nearly dropped his cup. The palace? "Yes, sir. The Queen, or, depending on the timeline, King Charles, wishes to personally thank you both for your service and your courage." For the first time in years, Reggie Thornton was speechless. The royal reception. A week later, Reggie found himself in a black suit and military medals, standing beside Sergeant William Harrington at Buckingham Palace. The king himself greeted them, shaking their hands and thanking them for their service. "You are both fine examples of duty and honor," he said. "It is men like you who uphold the spirit of our great nation." Reggie, in true veteran fashion, simply smiled and replied, "Just doing what we were trained to do, Your Majesty." The event made national news, and Reggie Thornton, a humble war veteran, became a household name. But the best part? The royal guard who had saved him that night was promoted within the regiment, gaining recognition not just for his bravery, but for proving that the duty of a soldier never ends. The final lesson. Months passed, and Reggie's fame slowly faded. But his respect for the younger generation of soldiers never did. One evening, he returned to the same cafe where he had always gone for tea. This time, a young soldier sat across from him, a fresh recruit, nervous about his first deployment. Reggie smiled and patted his shoulder. "Son," he said, "I've fought wars, I've faced down thugs, and I've shaken the king's hand. But the greatest honor of all? Serving beside men like you." And with that, the old veteran took another sip of tea, knowing that the future of the country was in good hands. Years passed, and Reggie Thornton's story became a cherished tale among both civilians and soldiers alike. Though his viral fame eventually faded, his legacy did not. He continued to visit the cafe every morning, greeting old friends and sharing wisdom with young recruits who often stopped by to listen to his stories. But as time went on, age began to catch up with him. One cold winter morning, Sergeant William Harrington, now Lieutenant Harrington after a well-earned promotion, received a letter. The moment he saw the sender's name, his heart sank. Reginald Thornton had passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 95. William put down the letter and let out a slow breath. The world had lost a great man, but his memory would never be forgotten. A hero's farewell the day of Reggie's funeral was unlike any other. As his casket was carried through the streets of London, hundreds of people gathered. Soldiers, veterans, and civilians who had been inspired by his story. Among them was Lieutenant Harrington, standing at full attention in his Royal Guard uniform. He had requested special permission to lead the honor guard at the ceremony, and it had been granted without hesitation. As Reggie's casket was lowered, William stepped forward and did something unexpected, something Royal Guards never did in public. He saluted. Not the rigid, ceremonial salute of the Royal Guard, but the true, heartfelt salute of a soldier to another. A silent moment passed, and then a bugler played the haunting melody of the last post. Tears welled up in the eyes of those present, but they weren't just tears of sorrow. They were tears of respect, gratitude, and admiration. The final tribute a few months later, a plaque was installed outside the cafe where Reggie had spent his final years. It read, "In honor of Reginald Thornton, 1927 to 2022, a soldier, a hero, a man who never stopped fighting for what was right. Once a warrior, always a warrior." And right beside the plaque, a royal guard was often seen standing nearby, quietly paying his respects to the man who had reminded the world that even in old age, a soldier's spirit never fades.